Okay, hello. Welcome to Socially Unapologetic. Today we have Rachelle Saevil, owner of Saevil Row. I am so excited to have you here today, Rachelle. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's fun to be on the other side of the mic.
Yes, this is a fun thing. And I love interviewing other people who have podcasts because I just feel like it's so fun and you're always the one talking and now you get to answer questions. So I'm really glad to have you here today. For those who may not know you, do you want us to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do and kind of the story of how you got to where you are today?
This is, I feel, a new question for me because I can have so many different ways of answering that. I am a new mom, a mom of two. My youngest is just a few weeks old, a business owner, a podcaster. I can, the list can go on, but my agency, Saevil Row, is a branding agency that I've had for over a decade now. And that's sort of been, to be honest, like my longest standing identity. So that's always like how I would introduce myself. But now I'm like, wait, there's so much more to me than just that. So that's why I'm like, which version would you like?
Yeah. No, I love that. Let's dive into how did Saevil Row come to life and how did you start that? What was the background of starting that passion for you?
That's an interesting question because I never sought out to have my own business. It was something that truly kind of like fell into play. I was living in Toronto and um, worked in corporate like agency kind of life, always in the design field. And I got to a point I was about 28. So they also call it your Saturn return. Like, I don't know, have you heard of that? Where it's like you've
No.
lived a full, I think it's like your sun has done a full trip around the universe, the zodiac. I'm totally getting this wrong, but I'm sure listeners probably will understand what I'm saying. And it is like the time where you are truly meant to come into yourself. Like you've been around that full loop of the sun, and now things start to fall into place. So I didn't really realize that until after, but it was around this time that I actually booked a one-way ticket to Paris, and I packed up my life. I left my job, I left the relationship I was in, and went to Paris on a one-way ticket. And honestly, like, that not only was life-changing for me, but it was also one of these things where I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going to wing it and I'm going to go from there. And that was sort of the catalyst that kind of brought on me starting a business because I went with no job or no friends. I had savings in the bank. Yes, I didn't have an apartment. Like, everything was truly winging it at this point. And we're dating back to like 2014. So it was a little, like, a while ago. It was very brave of me to make that big move. But when I look back on that, it truly was the cornerstone of starting a business because I'm like, well, I've always freelanced here and there. I've never really, done anything more than that. Surely I could figure it out. And that's exactly kind of what happened is one thing after another led to clients and just kind of like keeping going. And I'm like, well, I guess this is a business now. Don't ask me how I was keeping track of like invoices and things like that because it was very on the fly. But for the most part, it was kind of like I found myself in this situation where I could really leverage the skills that I had. I already had an existing sort of network that I reached out to. And from there, it was like Saevil Row was born.
I love that. And sorry, going back to the whole circle thing, is that when you're 28 or that just happened when you're 28? Because I'm about to
No,
hit 28 and I'm like,
it's a proven thing. It's a known thing. It's between 28 and 29 called
okay, that's
Saturn
scary.
Returns or Saturn Return. Yeah.
It's coming for me.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's exciting. It truly is like a really interesting time in your life because I feel like you've lived up until that point discovering the world, right? And like discovering who you
Hmm.
are and like really getting to understand like where you sit and where you might want to go. And I truly feel like, and I think they do say like the 20s are about finding who you are, the 30s are about really discovering that and being like super confident in that. 40s is like really embracing it. 50s is like you just
Hmm.
don't give a fuck about anything. So it's
Yeah.
like, I love that
Yeah.
that like unapologetic version of myself that will to come in a decade's time. But yeah.
Hmm. No, I love that. And I love that you also touched on starting the business because I've talked about this a lot, but owning a business for me too was never something I dreamed of or something I ever thought. And it just everything kind of fell into place. And I think it's so important to touch on that when it comes to entrepreneurship because everybody thinks it's always you grew up and you knew you wanted to be a business owner, and you've had people around you that were business owners, and you've always wanted this. It's like, no, sometimes it literally comes out of nowhere. You start with nothing and then you make something out of nothing, and like you touch on the
Absolutely.
invoices and all of that, and it's like that's all the chaos that nobody gets to
Mhm.
see about the life of owning a business. Like it's not.
Absolutely. And you never make the same mistake twice, you know, like you go into it and you you learn as you go. And I do feel it is kind of that really naive sense of going into something without really knowing what it takes to build a business, because I think if you did know, chances are you would probably talk yourself out of it time and time again, because you're like, wait, this is a lot harder than I expected it to be. But when it's kind of like, let's give it a go, you don't really know what's two steps ahead of you, you know, until you can look
Mhm.
back on hindsight and be like, wow, I've actually come a long way because I've gotten through all these things from the past, but you can only see that looking back.
Yeah, all the hurdles that you go through. I want to touch on also your other identity that we talked about, but like the mom, and like where you are now in life, and kind of like touching on that. And I know you're in Australia, so maybe like touching on how your life kind of evolved from Toronto to Australia to being a mom of two.
Yeah, Toronto to Paris to Australia. It's I mean, yeah, I sometimes think as well, like, how did I get myself here? Like, how did all of this happen? Because it was definitely not in the like 5 year, 10 year plan when I was younger. When I was in Paris, I had met a few Australians being there, and my time had kind of come to an end. I didn't have a visa that I could like legally stay there, so I thought better not rock the boat with immigration. I
Mm.
would definitely love to go back to Europe at some point, and so I left after 2 years of living in Paris. I ended up coming to Australia just with the intention of staying for a year. Like I did not have any intention at all of moving here. And then a few months after me being here, I ended up meeting my now husband. And I mean, that the rest is history, truly, from that point of view. And having the business be able to, it was always digital. Like we never really, we had a satellite office in Sydney, but we were always working with clients remotely for, you know, across the world. And that was the benefit of being able to grow an international agency, is never really having like one place to be like, we only service these people. And so with the growth of the business, it just sort of allowed the business to truly grow organically. And what that did was, I guess, like let me stay here longer and have that kind of component of it. And as that side of the life grew and my relationship grew, it truly was like, what other, you know, what else do we want? I always wanted kids, but I wasn't really sure what that looked like. And truthfully, being in the place of owning a business and having so much of your identity tied up in that, I was really nervous to step away and have a family or start a family. I feel like I didn't really have a lot of role models who were doing that, who were women running agencies, had a family. It was usually like younger women or it was men. And so there wasn't really a good mirror for me to understand, oh wait, I can do that too. And this is sort of
Mm.
where there was a lot of friction in terms of being at the stage of life that I was, being the age that I was, and also wanting these things, but not wanting to sacrifice or compromise where I was at in my career and what I wanted for the business. And so, yeah, 2023, we had our first child, our daughter, and that was just, you know, such an incredible experience for me, because not only did every fear that I had about starting a family not come true, it really opened up a new position for me within my business, or it like really allowed me to step into the business owner aspect of it instead of being the employee of my business. And I
Mhm.
really found that it allowed me to only really focus on the things that mattered. I was no longer stuck behind the computer, you know, doing the client work. And as much as I was always trying to get away from that, I kept getting pulled back into the business, just, you know, one thing after another. So it really wasn't truly until I had my daughter that I was like, I have no time for doing the things that aren't going to be driving the business. Whereas I think before I could
Mhm.
make excuses for myself, or like make excuses for what was happening, about being like, oh, the business needs me. Only I can do this. Or like, so, you know what I mean? Like these clients are expecting me to be on this call. Whereas now it's like, sorry, I can't be on that call, but my team can, like my very capable team who I've hired and like trained to be running this company for me and with me, they can take that on. So that side of my identity really started to come through as I entered motherhood. And then, you know, we welcomed the birth of our second child, a boy, earlier this year. And then, you know, like all of a sudden I'm a mom of two. And I'm like, now I really do not have that time. So while I
Mm-hmm.
haven't really dove back into the business to a full capacity yet, like I'm only 3 months out of baby number two, I'm already seeing that my role, my requirements have really fine-tuned compared to what they were before. So like I've gone through these different iterations with each baby to be like, my focus now needs to be on this one thing instead of these 5 things, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like this identity component of me has just allowed me to be hyper focused on the things that matter at home and at work, and be really selective and discerning with where my time goes, because I do not have an abundance of it. I need to be really selective with where that goes and what I do. So yeah, I'm still figuring it out, but I'm really enjoying just like this hyper focus of like where my time goes with this new identity that's evolving.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you touched on like that aspect of like as business owners, I think we always try to be every hat. We try to do everything. And you know that if something has to be done, you're like, well, I can do it I can do it. Like I'll just do it. And we
I'll
always
do
like
it
give ourselves
faster.
yeah, we'll like give ourselves these excuses. And you're like, well, if I do it, then I'll save myself money here, whatever it may be. And we always come up with a million excuses, but you can't be every single hat. It's not sustainable. That's how burnout happens. That's how like you start to hate your job. That's how you start to lose every
Absolutely.
aspect of you outside of your business. So I love that you touched on that, because I always bring up like that work-life balance and knowing that yes, our businesses are our lives, but they're also not our whole identity. They're not who we are and that's only who we are. We are many other things. And I think it's so important, especially as women, because we do try to be every single thing without thinking. It's just like natural habit as
Yeah.
women. We're just like, yeah, we can clean the house the same time we're taking the dog. Like, we think we can
All
literally
the multitasking.
yes. And it's like it's nice and refreshing to hear sometimes that people like you're able to step back and you're able to like reflect on that, because I do think a lot of people forget that
It takes
we
work
are
though, Brooke, you know, like
yeah.
it's not one thing that you can easily go into and be like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't be doing that. And I think it only comes with experience, and it only
Mhm.
comes with truly like understanding where you want to drive your business, because you're right, you can't do everything well on your own. And I think being
Mhm.
really aware of that to then say, I need to bring someone on whose expertise is X that I can then focus on these other things is so important. Yes, in the beginning, we need to wear multiple hats and we need to be doing all of the things. And I think that's how you get to learn what is required from an operations perspective. But as you go on, I think that's like probably the biggest mistake that I made really early on, is just the wrong hires at the right time. It's like I needed the support, but I brought in someone that I thought would make my life easier, like a junior designer. I probably should have brought on a senior designer straight away so that I wasn't having to review as much, or I wasn't having to provide as much guidance. I should have also brought on an account manager right away so that I wasn't doing all of the admin and the emails. Like I was the one that had the skill of the design. I should have
Mhm.
focused on that, brought someone on to help me with the management side of things. Again,
Mhm.
hindsight, but you look at
Yeah.
these things and you're like, where's the right hire that's going to get me to focus on the things that actually matter, not like what will help support me, and I think this should be okay, but I might still have to do that, so I won't really get to focus on growing the business.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you said that. I think like all of that is just so accurate. I want to like kind of dive in to you like the actual your business and kind of like the nitty-gritty of what you do. So, what like gap in the market are you solving in the design agency world?
I love that question because I'm always just like, uh, we're a branding agency. So like if you're starting a business, you know what I mean? It's because
Yeah.
we've just done this for so long and it's so second nature. It's such an interesting question to me to answer. So as I've alluded to and already mentioned, we are a branding agency. We service global clients. We really focus on brand identity, brand strategy, kind of brand positioning as well in terms of like marketplace fit and things like that. And then straight through rollout, especially if we're focusing on consumer packaged goods, the packaging, the website, the whole experience. So we're really full service in that aspect of kind of the creative agency component. And anything we don't do in-house, we have incredible partners that we lean on that we can connect clients with truly all across the world in most global cities. So I think that's really unique because we want to be able to bring the ideas together. You know, I always say that like you have the idea and the vision, like we bring that to life through design. And that's exactly what we want to be able to do is translate a vision and an idea into a full scope project. And again, if we don't do the photography, for example, but we want to make sure that whoever you bring on still emulates the exact vision and identity of the brand that we've been creating together. And so we want to make sure that that is really executed properly. So we're super involved in that process, whether we're still doing the art direction or sort of like image bank vibes. We're really making sure that the whole brand comes to life as you as the founder has imagined it to be, for that sort of full end-to-end approach.
I love that. And then what type of brands? I mean, like, have you worked with all type of brands? Do you work with like anybody that's coming? What like kind of industries do you guys see come across the most?
Yeah, I like to say it's mostly lifestyle brands because it truly encompasses everything that we do. So health and wellness, fitness, beauty, fashion, interiors, architecture. Like we wouldn't do plumbing or electric or like, you know, car salesman website. Unless I always say the caveat, like unless it's a client's husband or something like that. Like we've actually done a lot in the financial services space where we have like fund managers and investors. We've done things like that for our clients' husbands. It's not on our portfolio, but we definitely can be a chameleon when it comes to creating brands because at the end of the day, it's still rooted in the, you know, the strategy component, the kind of marketplace positioning. Like we're still creating a brand that people need to connect with. So irrespective of the industry that they're in, we really want to be focusing on this emotional connection that you can create with a brand that connects with that audience and being really intentional about that and being strategic about it as well. So we do sort of see more in that lifestyle space. And that's also what we enjoy doing, you know, like we are working on quite a few supplement brands right now. We just finished off a skincare brand. So like that kind of stuff is things that we really love. So we can be a little bit more connected to it. And I also feel like we can deliver the best results when it's something that, you know, truly encompasses an everyday lifestyle product or an everyday lifestyle service that we are passionate about.
Yeah, 100%. And how, so example, like if a founder or a business owner comes to you and they're all over the place, like how, and respectively, like you're starting a business, you need all the things. So with somebody coming, like they're overwhelmed, they're unclear, what is kind of like, how can you talk a bit about like the clarity and alignment in branding and like how do they get from that place of overwhelmed and unclear to the final result with you guys?
Yeah. And that is so common for them to come and be like, I have this idea and I want it to be like this, but I want this and I like this kind of style, but I also like this. And they're all over the place. Really, it's coming back to what is the main objective of this brand. For us in our process, we have sort of an initial questionnaire that's just a curated list of questions we get clients to fill out to just understand like, what is in your brain? Tell us, just brain dump everything on what you want this product to be, who you want to attract, how you want people to feel, because it really kind of comes down to those feelings and really the mission and the driving force behind the brand in terms of how we can really create something memorable. So I really want to kind of get into your mind as the founder and really understand what your objectives are, what you want to create, what you want this brand to be. And then we have a really in-depth strategy session that we do. So from that questionnaire, we actually put together a whole strategy session that brings together essentially like mirroring what you're saying, but making sense of it a lot more and also making sense of it visually. So many founders are visual people. They're like, I don't know until I see it, you know? And so for us, it's really important to get aligned on the same page visually to make sure that we understand that direction. So for us, we put together a bunch of different things. We'll also put together different mood board images, and we go through a really big deep dive virtual session and talk through the brand, talk through these essential things. But essentially from that initial questionnaire, we really make sense of that vision and those values and kind of keywords, so that when we get on an initial call, we're like, based on what you sent, this is what we're feeling for the brand. This is what we're seeing. This is what kind of we're mimicking you say. And 9.9 times out of 10 is exactly that. It's just getting someone who can be outside of your brain, collecting the ideas and being like, okay, based on this, you said this, and this is kind of where we want to position it. And I think from that initial strategy component, and yes, we're diving into the positioning and the mission statement and the tone of voice and the market fit and all of that, but we really just want to start piecing together the components of the brand and the vision so that it makes sense. And then it's easier to be like, okay, step 1 is the strategy. Step 2 is the identity. Step 3 is the execution, and really guiding clients along that. I always like to say, we truly hold our clients' hands through every step of the process, because we've done this time and time and time again over the last decade. So we have the trust, we have the expertise, we have the credibility. And I think that's what clients really appreciate, is when we can then take that vision, that kind of idea, map it out for them visually so they can see and connect the dots. And then we're like, cool, so next step is this. And, we get to work on creating the visual identity, the visual concepts. Okay, next step is this. And they know that process as well straight out of the gate, because we really want to make sure they understand, a specific timeline. Strategy and brand identity might be about a 6-week timeline. So we're like, this is what we're doing every step of the way so that they feel a part of it. Because you're right, it's so overwhelming when you look at something, you're like, cool, how long is a piece of string? Where do we go from here? What does that look like? And so it's just about taking things in bite-sized chunks, but also having that foresight to be like, this is what we're going to need in 3 months' time. I don't think people realize sometimes how long it takes to build a brand and how to get all these things, and we have the website, but we need photography and we need copywriting, so it's like, first comes this, then this, and really guiding them along that process to make sense of that unclear vision when they first come to us.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, because I even deal with this like in my industry. It's like I think a lot of people, like, we want fast results and they want things done quickly. And it's like, well, if you do something quickly, you're never going to get those like professional results. Like, same with social media. You can't rush organic social media. That's not organic anymore. Like, it takes that away.
There's like this triangle, right? It's time, money, and quality. And you can't have all three unless you're willing to do all three. So if you cut down time, you're sacrificing the other two things. You might pay more, you might get less of a quality. So I think it's really important to look at that and know that you only launch once. So if you're, and also I find so many clients come to us with completely just like ambiguous timelines that they put on themselves, or deadlines that they're like, it needs to be live by September 1st. And you're like, where did this date come from? And I just don't think you can rush the process. I think you need to go into it, of course, with a healthy timeline, but you need to understand what's included. And also, like I said, we've had clients come to us and they were like, we need this website live in 4 weeks. Can you make that happen? And we're like, well, typically it's an 8-week process, for 4 weeks actually would not be realistic. But if someone was like, we need it done in 8 weeks, and we're like, typically it's 12, but we can do what we can. Development, if anything, from a website perspective, takes the longest time because you have to test it and you have to do all these different things. You have to look for bugs. And those are just the things that we don't want to sacrifice quality for. So we're always very upfront with clients on timing of things. But yeah, I definitely think a lot of the times it's arbitrary dates that people put on of like, it needs to be live by this day, but you're like, but why? Why does that need to be,
You're like,
Let's
did you just look at your calendar?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of people are like, oh, it's my birthday and I wanted to launch on my birthday. It's like, cool, you should have come to us 4 months ago to do that,
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I want to talk a bit about like the biggest like business lesson you've learned. Obviously you've been in business for like over 10 years, so there's probably a bunch of things that you've learned. But if you could like think of one specific thing, and like how you kind of learned that the hard way, or if you could like say a story or whatever it may be.
I had two. One I already touched on, and that was hiring for the position that you need and not going to take you back into the business. So for me, for example, as I was like a solopreneur. I really should have hired a senior designer, not a junior designer, because the junior designer took me so much more time to train, and not only train, review the work, provide the feedback, when I could have just had somebody nail it out of the park every single time without me having to be so hands-on. So that was, I think, probably one of the biggest mistakes that I look back and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have actually paid the bigger salary, got the right person in, because it actually could have meant the quality would have been better and I would have been able to focus my time on other things. So I think that's the biggest lesson, is just hiring the right people who are really going to support you in the growth of your business. Number 2 was hiring the wrong mentor and spending thousands of dollars doing this. I think that you have a really good idea on when you are being sold to and when you're going to actually get the results that you're looking for. I've had amazing mentors in the past, and that's been a great investment for me. But a few years ago, I brought on this mentor who was meant to take the business to the next level. And the first 2 sessions, we were talking about the most basic things that I'm like, I really do not think I'm going to be getting the outcome that I was sold on and that I was expecting. And when I say it was thousands of dollars, I'm like, it was thousands of dollars. Like it was definitely down the drain, and it didn't end well. When I tried to get out of it, it was not a great situation, and it did not end well. And that really kind of scarred me from a mentorship capacity, and really I've leaned on other mentors now, and it's been an incredible situation. But the wrong person guiding you down a direction that does not feel good for you, you need to flag that immediately and change directions. I think a lot of times people also get stuck in this like sunk cost fallacy, right? Like, I've already committed to this, or I've already invested this, but there's no greater damage than keeping on something that's just never going to get you in the direction that you want to go, or get you the results that you know that you want and need. So it's like, get rid of that as quickly as possible, move on, forget about the money that you've spent, and just, call it a day.
Yeah. And I want to kind of touch on that, because I think like the whole mentorship thing is really important. And I think as business owners, like, we have a million things coming at you, right? It's like, you should do this to grow your business. You should do this to grow your business. You should be like all of these things. And this is why I kind of started this podcast, is like, I feel like as business owners, there's a million things being thrown at us and you never really know what way to go. So I want to touch on like the mentorship and like how that's kind of transformed with you. Obviously not the bad experience, but how like that's helped you, and how that's helped you like scale your business. Because a lot of the times, like, I'm 5 years in my business, you like you've hit plateaus throughout the way, right? Like, you hit those plateaus, you don't know how else to grow. So I wanted to like touch on that and hear your experience.
Bringing on a mentor was hands down one of the best things I ever did in my business very early on. I probably had my first mentor maybe 2 or 3 years into my business, and it was a group program, and it was the best. Yeah, it was the best investment that I had made. And to this day, she had taught me so many things, so many great lessons. I was super involved in it. And so I think it, if anything, really helped to fast track where I was going. Yes, I didn't listen to all the advice that she gave, and I probably should have. And I think that's kind of where it goes back to like the hiring component. And to be honest, like, backing yourself. The reason why I wasn't doing that is I wasn't believing in the success that could bring me. I was really stuck in my own way. And so that had nothing to do with the mentor and everything to do with me just honestly believing in myself. And I feel like any roadblock that I've come into in business has always come down to that. Like, really not backing myself in big decisions and big ideas and directions. And I think that's really important, is being your own advocate and being like, I believe in you wholeheartedly, and that's a big business lesson that truly, like, 10 years in, I'm still trying to lean into. And so it's something that mentorship absolutely, especially in the beginning days, will really help roadmap out the process for you. It will see blocks, it will see gaps where you need to fill. And I think it's so valuable to anybody starting a business. Invest in that sooner than you think.
No, that's amazing. Thank you for touching on that, because I think that's something that like we haven't touched on in this season of the podcast. So I'm really glad that we kind of came across that. But
yeah, if I can add one more piece of value to that, then it's really looking for a mentor who you connect with, who you know has done things and worked with businesses in the past, especially if it's, you know, someone that you really look up to or someone you admire. And then also interview them just as much as they're going to be interviewing you for the right fit. If there's someone you know that this mentor has worked with, ask them their experience with the mentor. I wish I had done that with that bad situation that I mentioned, because there had been two other people who had worked with the same woman, and they didn't realize that I had worked with them, and they had a very similar experience. And they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you had that experience. And I was like, oh, I wish I would have told you before
Yeah.
all of that happened, you know? And I've been in situations before where I've been able to step into someone and be like, oh my gosh, I saw that you were considering this. Please don't do it, you know? Because honestly, it was a real reflection on the full experience. And that also just goes to show how powerful word of mouth is, you know, and leaning on someone's personal experience. If they have something to back that up with, then yes, absolutely lean into that. So I think it's really important to do your homework just as much as they're going to be making sure that you are the right fit for their program.
Yeah. And I think like really leaning on like other business owners and always looking at it as like collaboration over competition. Like we're
Yes,
all unique in an industry. And I've had people be like, oh, why would you like on your podcast talk to somebody else in marketing? I'm like, that's not like, I don't see that as a threat. I see these people as like my like collaborators. Like I can like go to them and you can like, talk about experience. So I think it's always like important to touch on that it's okay to reach out to people and like you can have the
absolutely.
same mentor and everything's different. You are different. Your business is different.
Absolutely. You nailed that, because I think that's the thing, is a lot of people are hesitant to go down there. Where I have a friend of mine who has a competing agency to me, and I talk to her all the time of like, how are your inquiries going? Or like, who did that social reel for you? And she's like, oh, here's my motion graphic agency. And, you know, we chat all the time and share resources. And it's like, she's not, you know, worried that I'm going to go after her business and vice versa. If anything, it's kind of like, oh, cool. That's possible for you. That means it's possible for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It just opens up another realm. Like people are going to work with
Absolutely.
you and your business for you and your business, not
Yeah.
because of anything else. I ask this to everybody on my podcast, what does success mean to you? I know that everybody has different definitions of success, but I always like to ask this question because I think it's interesting for everybody's different perspective.
And I think that definition of success has changed so much over time. Now, for me, where that really comes in is freedom. Time freedom, money freedom, freedom to make my own choices and to do whatever I want to do, not being bound by a specific direction, a specific box, and just being able to be super flexible in what that looks like for me. So being able to spend my days the way that I want to be able to book that flight somewhere that I want to, and truly have that freedom and flexibility to do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like the exact same way. And I think it's always interesting as business owners, like when you first start a business to like when you're 2 years into a business, 5 years, 10 years, like it's always changing. At first you're like, money, I need to make money. And then it just like all changes as time goes on
Absolutely.
and that path
Absolutely.
keeps going. What if you could go back and give your younger founder self one piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be that you already have all the answers that you need. Just look within and trust yourself.
I love that.
I know,
That
I'm always just
is,
like, come on, like, why, you know, you've got this. And it's like, we are our biggest cheerleaders, but I do think that we can sometimes get so disconnected from reality sometimes, you know, and like we get so involved in the day to day, but and like look externally for like what we might want, but no one can tell us other than ourselves, right? Like no one can tell us
Mhm,
what our version of success is, or like where we want to grow the business other than within. So really
mhm.
trust that voice.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Rachelle, thank you so much for coming on my podcast, Socially Unapologetic. It was so nice to chat with you and get like an in-depth of your business, who you are as a business owner, mother. It was so amazing to chat with you. So thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much for having me. I love this chat with you.